tremendous amount of talent in the Caribbean. Like, to me, we supersede almost anything I've seen internationally. And I don't say that lightly. Even the curriculum that we complain about produces better students than what we see internationally. That regurgitation somehow works for us. You know, and I'm not saying it shouldn't change. I do believe that there's a lot that needs to be fixed, but we need some changes for sure. But when you look at that, we see technocrats doing the work. But your fight is always with the politician. You say the technocrats are there, but darling, we see the technocrats do the work all the time. And then the cabinet makes a decision and your work goes in vain.
I like politics, so I would say that I understand.
All right, just hold a moment for me. We do see that the leaders, the heads of government are coming in, and of course, Trinidad and Tobago invited some special guests, such as the leader of South Korea, the president of Rwanda, and of course, it has other special guests. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as others, are here to celebrate CARICOM's 50 with us. So we'll pay attention to see when they're coming in, to see if I can even glimpse my second Prime Minister, the Honorable Andrew Holness out of Jamaica. I have two Prime Ministers, but realistically, if CARICOM is to succeed, that's what I'm saying. If CARICOM is to succeed, I will have all 20 Prime Ministers, and I should be able to name them and blame them and hopefully not shame them.
I'm especially proud of the one where I came from.
Right? All right. So, Theresa, let's check back in with you. We're just here talking about, you know, the role of technocrats and the kind of work that they do, but how the politics, the same politicians who will hire you to do the work will also go against you with a cabinet note. How do we, it's true, how do we reconcile the two? So, because they will ask for the advice, but when it is presented, it's always shelved. How do we bridge that gap between what we know and where we need to go?
Here's a million-dollar question. And for those of us who worked very closely with governments around this region for decades, the best way to do it is to, again, back to the value proposition. What's in it for them? Because at the end of the day, a politician wants to stay in power. A politician has articulated a certain set of expectations among the population, and there are things that they want to get done in a particular way. I think technocrats need to figure that out. The technocrats actually are listened to because the evidence is there as to what's the best thing to do. And no minister wants to be embarrassed for doing something that's not going to meet the objective. So I think we have to figure out a way to work with politicians better. I'm probably not the best one to say that because I think there are times when, depending on your institution, there is a message that you want to send, and sometimes that message is not heard very well by politicians. But I think the best way to do it is to convince them that this is in their interest, and in order to, get reelected next time, you want to show some wins. So here are some things you can do to win. I want to talk a little bit, just diverge a little bit. Someone mentioned transformational leadership, and I think we have one in our midst, and we see her, I think, walking in now, and that's Pia Motley. She has taken a stage internationally. That's the first time I'm seeing a Caribbean politician highlighted every day of the week in the media. And she's not just ringing the bell for our region, she's ringing the bell for small island development states around the world. So it is possible to have transformational leaders come out of our region. It's not the first time, but I think what we're witnessing now is something quite extraordinary. And the fact that she's a woman speaks to 50% of our population. But when you look around that table of leaders in our region, she really stands out. And what I'd like to see 50 years from now, even 10 years from now, is to have half of those leaders represented by women. Because I think we need to have that different voice on the stage. And when we think about what's happening with women globally, according to the UN report that just came out last week, we're not doing very well, especially in politics. And the mindset of people around the world is that men make better politicians. That's just not true. We know that. We know that the countries that did well during COVID were the ones in New Zealand that had a female president. So we have evidence contrary to what the popular opinion is saying, but I think we have a long way to go in this in our region. And not to mention violence against women and children in the Caribbean, which is off the charts. So there's a lot of work to do. So let's find those transformational leaders and let's follow them.
One from 20 Leaves Not?
Yeah.
I don't. I would say though, following on from our colleague, I don't necessarily agree that women make better political leaders. I'm a woman. I'm going to say that. I think though that we are very good at managing crises, and so I am really not surprised that during the COVID period, you would have seen the countries that were led by women were able to manage quite well. And I am a social scientist. I'm standing by that because the thing with politics, it's a funny kind of animal. And female leadership is challenged by the men. It's not a case where you would have a female leader and she is ensconced with 5 women, 5 men. Her cabinet, she tends to be the only female sometimes, or maybe one other.
As we're seeing in CARICOM, the only female.
And we see, and we know there's a lot of jostling behind there. There's a lot of corridor diplomacy, bedroom diplomacy. It's not only boardroom diplomacy. And all of this operates within foreign policy and regional exchange if we carry it at that level in terms of engagement and brokering deals and what have you. But certainly at the national level, the female politician, when she takes that leadership, is challenged in that regard. And so therefore, she has this dual role, a duality that makes it more challenging for her than, say, a male. So this is why I say I don't necessarily agree with that. Not saying that is a problem for the female, that she can't do it, but it is about that environment, that context that she has to operate in that makes it challenging. What does that mean for a regional integration movement? Well, it's disturbing because if you look at the region, I believe that the global stats that were just mentioned there, we are a reflection of that. I don't remember what is the exact stat, but women in the Caribbean are not doing very well at all.
Right.
We are not doing well at all.
I'll get back to that point as to whether or not even the word woman is under threat, but we'll get back to that. Because on screen now we're seeing the delegates arrive at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. We're seeing prime ministers making their way into the ballroom. And we wait to see what they have to say. Of course, they're being escorted by the Girls Guide of Trinidad and Tobago and the Scout Association of Trinidad and Tobago. We will be having Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo, accompanied by NSSO, and then, of course, you know, the national anthem of Dominica being sung by Miss Michelle Henderson. And as I say that, do you all know that there's a CARICOM national anthem?
Yes, CARICOM song.
I'm aware of that.
Yes, CARICOM song.
But I can sing it. Like, I don't know the words.
Neither do I.
I know the words.
You know the words?
No, I
And
know.
that is how you know we have work to do. But yes, I'm seeing those beautiful Girl Scouts there escorting. Can I make out who that is? No, I'm not able to make out the face from here. All right, so it's a back shot as now, but 50th anniversary of CARICOM and of course the 45th Heads of Government meet. And remember, you can stream us live at www.caribbeanbridges.com. We are here in studio and we're just trying to chalk it up and talk about what CARICOM has been able to do over the 50 years, what the weaknesses are, and what are some of the things that we really need to do to get things in a better place, such as the education. That's one of the points. The innovation that has to be driven by research and development, and of course the human capital.
Yeah.
But guys, we have to get into the economics.
Yes.
We have to like spend some time on the dollars and cents. And of course, remember, we do have Theresa on Zoom with us. So, Theresa, are you there?
I'm still here. So
okay, lovely.
I'm glad you're pivoting to economics, because I think this is really the crux of it, right? So the next 50 years, we have to do better. We know, and Justin will agree with me, productivity in the Caribbean is among the lowest in the world. So the reason why we're not growing fast is because productivity, meaning returns to labor, returns to capital, are not what they ought to be. I mean, they're negative in many countries. Jamaica right now is having a very unusual phenomenon where there's full employment and there's very little economic growth. So Capri, a think tank, did a study, and the title is Growthless Jobs, which is quite extraordinary when you normally think about. Economists tend to talk about jobless growth, but in Jamaica, anybody who wants a job right now has a job, but the country is growing at a very unimpressive rate, despite the last quarterly.
Theresa, just hold that thought for me. We're
Okay.
seeing Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley on screen, and now the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago making his way into the ballroom there, and of course accompanied by the Girls Guide. And so we're seeing the leaders on stage with all the flags behind them. Now that is one of the sights that I love to see, all the flags and what they really mean. And I think for each person, it is so important to understand what your flags mean, you know, so that you can have an appreciation of self. People always say Jamaicans are patriotic. It's because before you could walk good and talk good, you had to know the national flag, what the colors mean. You had to know the national anthem, the national pledge. Before God and all mankind, I pledge the love and loyalty of my heart. You get what I'm saying. And I remember being on radio and doing a segment asking people to call in and say the national pledge of Trinidad and Tobago. The older people were able to do it. The older people were able to do it. Some of them, most of them. Younger people? No. So, all right, so.
That speaks a lot.
So we're standing by for the arrival of Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo. So let's just pay attention to what's happening there.
And now, please welcome the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo, ORTT, and His Excellency Kerwin Garcia, SC.
And of course, they're getting ready to sing the national anthem of Dominica by Miss Michelle Henderson, which will be followed by the national anthem of Trinidad and Tobago, sung by Miss Hermina Charles. Not the national anthem of CARICOM. All right, here's the president on screen, Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo walking in with her entourage. Right, and she's making her way into the room, and I think she's going to be bringing some remarks as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo, ORTT, and His Excellency Kerwin Garcia, SC. And now, the national anthems of the Commonwealth of Dominica, performed by Michelle Henderson, and the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, performed by Hermina Charles. Please remain standing. We invite their excellencies to be seated. We invite the heads of government of the Caribbean community to make their way off stage and retire to their seats.
And we're coming to you live from a Guardian Media Lab right here on St. Vincent Street in Port of Spain. And of course, we're watching what's happening at the Hyatt Regency, where we have Julian Rogers and Dr. Marlene Atz covering events there for us. And we're just here in studio having that discussion for you about what CARICOM is about and just some of the changes that we need to do. I do have in studio with me Dr. Justin Ram, who is economist and policy advisor, as well as Dr. Joanne Tull, who is a lecturer of creative industries.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we now invite you
Indies.
to be seated. And here to perform the CARICOM song is Dominica's renowned jazz and fusion singer, accompanied by the National Steel Symphony Orchestra of Trinidad and Tobago. Please welcome Michelle Henderson.
From many distant lands, our forefathers came, some seeking adventure, some bound in chains. Through battles waged and fought, through victory and pain, by test of their courage, our freedom was gained. In homage to those gone before us, the heroes of lands in the sun, we vow to join hands and to focus on building one Caribbean. Raise your voices high and sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong. Feel our hearts beat as one. Celebrate in song as we rise to heights where we belong. Sound the victory drum for CARICOM. Though great and diverse be our ethnicity, the bonds that unite us are stronger than we. We dine, we pray, we love, we dance and we play, we relate to each other the West St. John way. Today as a people united, determined and steadfast we stand. We
All thanks to Michelle Henderson from the Commonwealth of Dominica and the National Steel Symphony Orchestra from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, at this time, we pause our program to invite faith leaders to offer their blessings on this assembly. We begin with His Grace Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon, RC Archbishop of Port of Spain.
There's a wonderful story of creation. That when Papa God created the lands, the seas, and formed the boundaries of everything, he had just a little bit of matter left in his hand. And he asked what to do with this. And he said, I know. And he took it and scattered it like stones skipping along a pond, forming an archipelago that we now call the Caribbean. Papa God, we thank you for your creation of us, your people, feisty and beautiful, vibrant and powerful, individually small and vulnerable, but together a mighty force to be reckoned with. Vulnerable to creation and to climate change, vulnerable to the ideas of big nations, vulnerable to the power plays of the world, and to debt. But together, we pray, O God, that as our heads of nations meet in these days, that we may chart a way not just to see the possibility of our region for today or for tomorrow, but for our children's children and their children to see a way to be Caribbean, where in the world we may stand tall. And in the world, we may leave a legacy for generations to come of what nations can do when their leaders unite with vision and purpose. And we ask, O God, your blessings upon this meeting, that vision and purpose may flow for all of our people. We make our prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Your Grace. We continue with the head of the Anglican Diocese, the Right Reverend Bishop Claude Berkeley.
Oh, how good and pleasant it is when brethren live together in unity. It is like fine oil upon the head that runs down the beard, upon the beard of Aaron, and runs down upon the collar of his robe. It is like the dew of Hermon that falls upon the hills of Zion, for there the Lord has ordained the blessing, life forevermore. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and shall be forever. Amen. Sovereign Lord and Father, you have given your Holy Spirit to your people to lead them into all truth. Bless with the Spirit's grace and presence the members of the 45th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the CARICOM community, celebrating CARICOM's 50th year of establishment. Keep them steadfast in their commitment to serve the Caribbean people and united in a love that engenders hope in treating with the many challenges which beset us as a people. Grant them, O God, the wisdom to lead us through the enduring issues of emancipation, climate change, natural disasters, human trafficking, drug abuse, post-colonial dystrophy, economic stagnation, migration, and a host of challenges to our people in these days. enable your chosen leaders, dear Father, to recognize and utilize the things we have in common and plan accordingly to bolster our capacity as a group of small island states, deepen their understanding of one another's needs and their respect for each other as they deliberate. Moreover, unite them in the common cause of justice, truth, and freedom that will enhance the dignity of Caribbean people and bring you honor and glory. Bless this 45th meeting, O God, and grant that it may be a celebration of 50 years of distinguished service, so that its outcomes will move us further along pathways of progress and peace. And we pray for these mercies through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Your Lordship. Representing the Hindu community, His Holiness Dharmacharya Pundit Dr. Ramprasad Parasarab.
Greetings, Jai Sitaram, Namaskar. We turn to God this evening as we gather here to do the people's business, and remember that God is our mother and father, our brother, our friends, our prosperity, our wisdom. Indeed, God is our everything. So, as we move to build safe, secure, and sustainable communities together, we pray to God to continue to shower His grace upon us, and we pray for His mercy and His guidance. Please bow your heads. Hari Om Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishah Go Brahmanebhya Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vindhya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. God bless us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Holiness. From the Orisha community, Baba Neil Ryan Rawlins.
Pleasant good evening. I call on the omnipotent Olodumare, the everlasting giver of life, to grant us life existence. I call on Papa Esho Elegwa, the divine messenger of transformation, the divine secretary to Olodumare, the one who opens and closes the doorway to and the pathway to mankind, to intercede in this celebration of the life of the 50th anniversary of the region of CARICOM, this historical signing of the Treaty of Chagaramas on this day in 1973 to establish the Caribbean Community and Common Market, CARICOM. I call on our positive ancestors, on all our ancients, those who came before us through the Middle Passage on slave ship against their will, that forcibly charted the way for us to be here. Today, to this sacred island, Trinidad, La Trinity, this country, Trinidad and Tobago. It's to this region, the Caribbean, this diaspora, these 15 members and its associate member state, I pay homage and respect to the pioneers of the Caribbean community. I ask the everlasting giver of existence to continue to give us life. Help us that we may overcome all fears, all anxiety, all hardships, all ills, and any form of negativity that may cause harm. Grant us that peace of living our lives fulfilled, so we experience the goodness and greatness that the omnipresent Olodumare has to offer us, such as hope, faith, love, peace, understanding, wisdom, knowledge, protection, good governance, fresh courage, and continued blessing. I call on all the Orishas to come and guide and to assist us as we continue to fight away the darkness that is attempting to dominate the earth and mankind. I pray for a positive revolution, a release, a renewal, a rekindling of life, of love, of hope, of faith, of brotherhood, mutual respect, spiritual consciousness, and understanding. To all the peoples of this region, this Caribbean community, I call on the mystery of the spirit of I and Papa Ogun and the waters that surround us in abundance to continue to support and protect this region. In closing, I pray for continuous collaboration, for sustained, positive, systematic development for our region, and building of strong community relations with human dignity, fundamental freedoms, and human rights, without distinction as to race, sex, language, and religion. A solid foundation to build on. I ask the positive energies of the universe to continue to bless and keep our region protected and peaceful. I pray for unity, togetherness. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Thank you, Baba Neil Ryan Rawlins. We continue in prayer with Bishop Andrew John of the Pentecostal Assemblies of the West Indies.
The Lord is the strength of my life. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear when the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh? They stumbled and fell. Today, precious God, we pray that you would be this defense to our region, the Caribbean. We are asking as we gather at this 50th celebration of CARICOM that you would grant your blessings to our political leaders, delegates. Give them discernment, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Give them grace, increase their faith, and prepare them to pursue your excellence at this conference. Bring them to you and help them to know and fulfill their duties. Almighty God, help our leaders excel in strength and courage. Surround them with influences that impart and impact sound and godly counsel, for without your counsel, their path will grow crooked. Lord, bless our leaders and have their attention centered on the urgent needs of our CARICOM region and provide the capabilities to make us prosper. Heavenly Father, I'm reminded of you in your words given to the wise man, King Solomon, in 2 Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14. If my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven
and forgive their sins and heal their land. Precious Jesus, enable our leaders in their responsibilities to become willing and obedient to your will. Let at this 50th CARICOM anniversary and 45th meeting of the Conference of CARICOM Heads of Government, that there be in the midst of our diversities of talents, differences of administration, and diversities of operations, that there be the same spirit for us to achieve the success of CARICOM. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Bishop John. Finally, representing the Muslim community, President General of the Anjuman Sunnat al-Jamaat Association, Imam Haji Ahmad Hussain.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the beneficent, the merciful, owner of the day of judgment. Thee do we serve, and thee do we beseech for help. O Allah, bless all the leaders of the Caribbean states, those who are members and those who are associate members. We ask of you, O Allah, to guide them in their deliberations, that they will make decisions that will be of benefit to their respective countries and citizens. We ask you, O Lord, to make the task easy for them. And when the summit is over, everyone will be satisfied to return to their country and continue to guide their citizens once more. قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you to Haji Ahmad Hussain. Our thanks to all heads of religion for leading us in prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. As we prepare for the formal remarks, we shall establish the salutations and protocol on which this, the opening ceremony of the 45th regular meeting of the Conference Heads of Government of CARICOM, shall be established. Your Excellency, Christine Kangaloo, ORTT, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Your Excellency Kerwin Garcia, SC. The Chairman of the 45th meeting in Conference of Heads of Government, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica. The host country Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and other heads of government of the Caribbean community. The Secretary General of CARICOM, Dr. Carla Barnett. The Chief Justice of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Mr. Justice Ivor Archie. The President of the Senate of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Nigel de Freitas. The Speaker of the House of Representatives of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Bridget Anisette George. Honorable Ministers of Cabinet. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres. The Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea, Your Excellency Han Duck-soo. Other heads of international and regional institutions, members of the diplomatic corps, heads of delegations, delegates, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome to deliver remarks the Secretary General of CARICOM, Dr. Carla Barnett.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Protocol having been established, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the 45th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM, where we are celebrating our 50th anniversary. On behalf of CARICOM, I express our appreciation to our host Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago for providing us a most favorable setting in which to conduct the business of the community and to celebrate our Jubilee. The Caribbean's world-renowned hospitality is very much appreciated. I extend sincere gratitude to our outgoing chair, the Honorable Philip Davis, Prime Minister of the Bahamas, who steered our community with foresight and determination through a period of significant developments. The community now welcomes the Prime Minister of Dominica, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, into the chair. I extend congratulations to you and assure you of the ongoing support of the Secretariat and myself as you lead the advancement of the community's agenda. I am pleased to acknowledge the distinguished presence of His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, one of our special guests who will celebrate and exchange views with us at this meeting. Over the next 2 days, we will engage with several guests, including the President of Rwanda, the Prime Minister of South Korea, high-level delegations from both the administration and Congress of the United States, and the President-designate of COP28. There is no doubt that, as our 50th anniversary theme underscores, CARICOM is 50 years strong, and we have a solid foundation to build on. This is a foundation that has been laid regionally and internationally by stalwarts who have been standard bearers for integration and for CARICOM to have its rightful place in the global community. We are building on the efforts of Arthur Lewis, William DeMaas, Alistair McIntyre, P.J. Patterson, Sridat Ramphal, Nita Barrow, Kamaluddin Mohammed, Peggy Antrobus, Owen Arthur, Patrick Manning, Edwin Carrington, and Billy Miller, to name just a few. They took on the vision of the founders and ensured that as the Caribbean community solidified its regional integration, it made a mark internationally, which demonstrated that the constraints of small size could be overcome by collaboration and integration. It was CARICOM that spearheaded the formation of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific states, now the OACPS, and led negotiations with Europe for preferential trading arrangements. CARICOM was at the forefront of the struggle for UN recognition of Small Island and Low-Lying Coastal Developing States, SIDS, and later played a critical role at COP21 in Paris in 2015, resulting in the agreement to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. CARICOM resuscitated and our leaders led the charge towards the International Criminal Court. CARICOM prioritized the importance of health in development policy in the Nassau Declaration of 2001 and brought the ravages of non-communicable diseases to global attention in the Port of Spain Consensus of 2007. Within our own space, we have established critical institutions that are high-functioning and highly regarded. No one can question the excellence of the Caribbean Public Health Agency, exemplified in their leadership in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The same applies to the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, whose performance, despite severe constraints and growing demands from the increasing impact of natural disasters, continues to be exemplary. The work of the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center has earned its universal acclaim, and the list can go on. Yes, we do have our challenges, and there are areas crying out for improvement which continue to bedevil us. The knotty issue of transportation, expansion of intra-regional trade, hassle-free movement of our citizens, and the pervasive nature of crime and insecurity stand out in that regard. We are grappling with a multifaceted crisis, crime and security, constitutional and political and humanitarian in our most heavily populated member state, Haiti. As our community seeks to assist the Haitian people to find an effective solution to the crises, we have appointed an eminent persons group which has started to facilitate dialogue among key Haitian stakeholders, beginning with a broadly inclusive engagement held in Jamaica a few weeks ago. This work will continue. We recognize the critical importance of food security, and as we shall hear from our lead head on agriculture and food and nutrition security, the thrust to reduce our food import bill by 25% by 2025 is gathering momentum. The urgency of advancing our digital agenda is first-line priority, and our regional digital development strategy is also therefore gathering momentum. Through our Human Resource Development Strategy 2030, we are implementing our action plan to equip our young people with the tools necessary to function effectively in the 21st century. We are seeking to embrace even more innovative ideas from our young people and moving to provide opportunities to challenge their creativity into areas of entrepreneurship. Further, a significant part of our agro-food agenda is encouraging young people into the sector, utilizing the new tools of IT-enabled protected agriculture to increase productivity and build sustainable livelihoods. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the global crises, the deleterious effects of climate change and natural disasters, and the ongoing threats to the security of our people, the achievements of the past 5 decades are proof that vision and concerted action are critical to achieving sustainable prosperity and security for our region. Time and again, despite changing global realities, our community has demonstrated that resolve and resilience necessary to maintain the course of integration. The Caribbean community has done well. It is therefore fitting that we acknowledge and celebrate our Golden Jubilee. I have every confidence that our deliberations and decisions over the next 2 days of meeting will set us on a course for another 50 successful years. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett, CARICOM Secretary General.
And of course, there you just heard from Dr. Carla Natalie Barnett, who is the Secretary General of CARICOM Secretariat. And she was just bringing words talking about the strides that CARICOM have made. And of course, some of the issues we need to work on. It sounded to me like the issues that she mentioned surrounded about the 4 pillars that CARICOM is supposed to be looking at: regional economic integration, human and social development, security. Did I miss anything? Did I interpret it correctly? That the issues that she still, I think we at some point will get to what we have done right, because I do believe that there are gains.
Yes.
Even with the teething pains, even with the issues, there are gains, such as some of the institutions that we mentioned earlier, the CARFA, the CXC, the UWI. These to me are stellar institutions and can stand up to the scrutiny. Yes, they have problems, but to me can rival any institution that we see there. So we have about 2 minutes left with you, and of course Therese is online. Therese, are you still there with us? All right, so Therese will join us closer to the end of the program. Of course, when Dr. Justin Ram and Dr. Tull leave the stage, we're going to be going to the Caribbean man, persona non grata, or man of journalistic integrity, Julian Rogers, and of course, economist Dr. Marlene Ants. They'll be joining us after this. So, Dr. Ram, final comments, because we really wanted to look at the economics, the economic integration, the fair trade, the food security, the taxes. So far, what have we gotten right?
So far, what we've gotten right is the establishment of these institutions. I think we've done well. As you said, we have well-functioning institutions. Where we have fallen short is what those institutions need to implement. And so we really need to have a concerted effort on that right now. We can't be going through another 50 years and looking back and saying, well, you know, we haven't got the outcomes that we desired. We have to ensure that we get the outcomes and work towards that tirelessly from now on.
Dr. Su?
I certainly would piggyback on that to say, yes, we have the institutional infrastructures in place, but we are weak on process. And process is a thing that requires us to look back, not in terms of being regretful necessarily, but trying to identify what we have done strong and where our gaps are, that we can improve processes as of here. And of course, that requires us to even think about what we really want in the future and not think of the future in the context of now. Because of course, our children are going to be the adults, let's say 50 years again, thinking of those processes in a way that is very avant-garde almost. So that the strengths that we have, building on what we have created, requires us now to drill in and look at process. What it is that we need to tweak and improve.
So we need to look at processes, and we definitely need to look at implementation. Dr. Justin Ram, thank you so much, Dr. Tull. Thank you as well, and of course, Therese, who was online, who will join us later on in the program. We are going to go to a video for you because we want to look at what CARICOM has been able to achieve over 50 years, a Jubilee celebration. And of course, we know that we heard from Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo and of course, it is Dr. Carla Natalie Barnett talking to us about just where CARICOM is and the work that has gone into CARICOM. To me, as a Caribbean people, we do have something to be proud of. So I just want to, and of course, I want to say thank you to the Group CEO of Massey for sponsoring this event. Thank you so much, because the younger people, as we keep talking about today, especially with 80% of Caribbean people, CARICOM people, under the age of 18, we definitely need those younger people to understand CARICOM, to be integrated, to feel as one. So we're going to go to that video now from Massey, so do stay with us.
Today, we at the Massey Group are filled with pride and admiration as we celebrate CARICOM's 50th anniversary. It is an honor to salute this remarkable milestone and reflect on the profound impact that regional integration movement has had on our Caribbean community. CARICOM, founded on the principles of unity, collaboration, and progress, has been instrumental in fostering cooperation among our nations. It has provided a platform for dialogue, exchange, and joint initiatives that have shaped the destiny of our region. As we commemorate CARICOM's 50th anniversary, we pay tribute to the visionaries and the leaders who championed this cause, paving the way for the Caribbean's growth and development. At the Massey Group, we recognize that our success is intrinsically linked to the vibrancy and resilience of the Caribbean community. For over a century, our group has thrived on the diversity and strength of our collective community. We owe a debt of gratitude to the Caribbean people who have been at the heart of our journey. CARICOM's accomplishments over the past 50 years serve as a testament to the power of collaboration. Together, we have made strides in areas such as regional security, economic integration, and the promotion of cultural heritage. As we celebrate this milestone, let us also acknowledge the challenges we have faced and the work that lies ahead. It is through unity and a shared vision that we will continue to chart our future. The Massey Group, committed to being a force for good, understands that success is not defined by financial achievements only, but by the positive impact that we have on our people and society as well. We are proud to be a part of a region that nurtures talent, fosters innovation, and supports sustainable development. As we stand at the threshold of the next 50 years of CARICOM, we embrace a future filled with hope and determination.
Good.
And that from the head of Massey Group, who is sponsoring this event. Thank you so much, Massey. But we're standing by for the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, who's going to be bringing remarks at the opening ceremony, coming to you live from the Hyatt Regency conference room, right in the heart of Port of Spain.
Protocol having been established across the CARICOM region, I, as host Trinidad and Tobago, hosting the region, I'm duty-bound to acknowledge Your Excellency, the President of Trinidad and Tobago, Mrs. Christine Kangaloo, and Mr. Corbin Garcia, the Chairman, Philip Davis of CARICOM, outgoing Chairman, incoming Chairman, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt, other CARICOM heads of government, Your Excellency Dr. Carla Barnett, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, Your Excellency Dr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency Hans Duck-Soo, Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea, the Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Ivor Archie, and Mrs. Denise Rodriguez Archie, the Honorable Bridget Anisette George, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and Mr. Newman George, Senator the Honorable Nigel de Freitas, President of the Senate of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and Mr. Siena de Freitas, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Ministers of Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and other Ministers of Government of the region, specially invited guests, Your Excellencies, heads of diplomatic mission, and ambassadors to the Caribbean community, members of Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, chief representatives of the international organizations, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, good evening. Today, it is my honor to welcome you to the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the convening of the 45th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM. For us here in the Caribbean, this is a significant event, as tomorrow we also launch the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the signing of the original Treaty of Chaguaramas, right here in Trinidad and Tobago. Historians of the future will agree that this celebration took place at a critical juncture in the regional integration movement. Never before have small states faced the broad and deep range of challenges that we face now. From climate change, pandemic, gun crimes and violence, transnational migration issues, to insecurity with food supplies, our region has been buffeted by many systemic storms. Throughout all of this, the majority of the people of our region have proven themselves to be resilient, resourceful, determined, and dignified. Today, I speak with confidence on behalf of all of my colleague heads of government when I say that we have been learning the lessons that history has taught us. It is true that some of the issues that our founding fathers grappled with on the long journey to Chaguaramas are still very much with us. But this is not to say that we have not made progress. 50 years after the birth of our union, and with the experience of having spawned so many regional institutions and institutional arrangements that work so well for us, now might be a good time to reflect on what it might have been if we were able to hold a Caribbean nation together. Today, we point within CARICOM to the Caribbean Development Bank, the Caribbean Development Fund, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, the Caribbean Meteorological Organization, CARICOM Implementing Agency for Crime and Security, the Caribbean Examinations Council, the Caribbean Court of Justice, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, the Caribbean Agricultural Development Institute, the University of the West Indies, the Caribbean Competition Commission. We also have a multilateral air services agreement, and we have in place a double taxation treaty. And I carefully add West Indies cricket. I, as a typical Caribbean man, was born in Tobago, lived in Trinidad, studied in Jamaica, worked on the volcanoes in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica, Montserrat, and St. Kitts, marveled at the power of the waters at Caicho Falls in Guyana, and counted the beach in Antigua, Barbados, and Grenada. All the while dreaming of what it could have been if the politics had allowed us to have one Caribbean nation, from northern Bahamas to our Brazilian border with Guyana and Suriname. What a wonderful world it could have been today, even if we had accepted 3/4 of a loaf instead of no bread. However, what's done is done. Let us not despair, because in the absence of political union, we were able, if not through vision, but through necessity, we have been able to salvage a good chunk of regional functionality in very many areas, notwithstanding the stress dished out by the men's cricket team. We have CARICOM as the next best thing to bring about regional cooperation, and we must continue to grow the integration movement by adding new blocks to the structure, even as we strengthen what already exists. Even where there was doubt in the beginning, the experience must have shown us that we are stronger together. And even though we are an amalgam of small pieces of the globe, on the world stage, we might be small, but we are not insignificant. As CARICOM, we are at our strongest. We could be at our best. Let's claim our space in this world and just do it. On this special celebratory occasion, we can reflect with reverence on the events that transpired in Chaguaramas on July 4th, 1973, and pay homage to the foresight our founding fathers had when they laid the foundation upon which this great family of nations was built. I anticipate that there will be many moments of introspection and reflection over the course of the next few days as we take the opportunity to mark this golden anniversary together, side by side. I am particularly delighted to acknowledge the 4 visionaries who pioneered our regional integration movement with valor and ensured that the original Treaty of Chaguaramas was signed on that fateful day. I speak about the late Prime Ministers Errol Barrow of Barbados, Forbes Burnham of Guyana, Michael Manley of Jamaica, and Dr. Eric Eustace Williams of Trinidad and Tobago. They were leaders who understood that our strength as small states lies in our unity. They understood that our collective destiny can only be fulfilled through our determined collaboration in the face of global systems that are designed to keep us weak, dependent, and apart from each other. It is my belief that if those founding fathers could speak to us today, they would re-emphasize the essential role of this regional leadership to empower our people to navigate the storms that the international order consistently throws our way. Indeed, I hereby inform the people of the Caribbean community that tomorrow, on the 4th day of July 2023, the 50th anniversary of the CARICOM's founding, we, the heads of government, will be placing into a special time capsule our letters, our reflections, our advice, our lessons addressed to our successors 50 years from now, to be opened by them on July 4th, 2073. I hope you see us there tomorrow in Chaguaramas as well. As I survey this lovely audience gathered here in this beautiful afternoon in Port of Spain, I am reminded that a much smaller audience would have traveled to Trinidad and Tobago for that very first Heads of Government conference in July 1973, which was convened by the late, great Dr. Eric Eustace Williams, the then Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Indeed, it was Dr. Williams, an eminent Caribbean historian, who proposed the creation of a Caribbean community at that time. The pioneering members, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. Today, 50 years later, our membership has grown to include 15 members and 5 associate members, but even further growth is near at hand. We look forward to joining hands with Martinique and the brothers and sisters of the Dutch Antilles soon. Those early steps taken in Chaguaramas have led us far beyond what the naysayers and doomsayers were certain would have been a short lifespan and another disastrous shattering. But here we are today, 50 years on, side by side, in mutual solidarity, regard, respect, and esteem. Strong, committed, and unified. Together, this regional family of nations can examine with pride our achievements during the last half-century. We have faced many challenges and have risen to overcome them. Despite the difficulties, through our cooperation, our shared goals, and above all else, through the friendship within CARICOM. Our regional integration movement has not only survived, but it has thrived, expanded, and flourished. Whilst we recognize that there's a whole lot more to be attained, at this juncture, we can proudly say that we have been going in the right direction. And with renewed confidence and vigor, we can indicate our intention to continue by joining the famous Jamaican radio announcer, Don Toppin, whose clarion call was always, "Today the Caribbean, tomorrow the world." Honored ladies and gentlemen, I have the distinction of having served in the political sphere for decades, not quite as long as my comrade Ralph Gonzalez, but long enough to have witnessed firsthand the way that CARICOM has remained relevant to the needs and dreams and aspirations of its regional citizenry. Our children need to be taught its relevance and its history. As we enter the post-pandemic era, our bonds are more important than ever before. None of us will ever forget those long, dark days and nights when over a few years, the lives and livelihoods of our people hung in the balance under the threat of what was then a very novel, death-dealing virus. Our trade, tourism, manufacturing, culture, services, and our very living was severely affected, and the gross domestic product of every member state was significantly affected without exception, and we went into stark decline. The resilience of our community endured this test and survived, in large part to the determination of our people and the strength bestowed upon us by our ancestors due to the strength of our regional organs, such as the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARICOM, and due to a caliber of leadership right across the Caribbean that joined in solidarity to advocate when needed, to remonstrate when necessary, to share when required, and through it all, to stand together through thick and thin. Over the past year, we have rebuilt and forged ahead as we have actively advanced the regional agenda, facing our challenges head-on. From rising regional debt to growing trade deficits, we as a community have been buffeted by the ravages of an international financial system designed to disempower us. As serious as the world's problems are, and having been shut out of many of the markets through trade restrictions like the sugar and banana industries, we can hardly be excited by the ongoing prospect of being escorted out of the world's financial system through de-risking and loss of correspondent banking, not to mention being encouraged to hastily abandon our hydrocarbon resources, even as others expand their natural gas production, open up nuclear power, and fire up their own coal powering station. Through participation in a series of ongoing high-level meetings amongst ourselves and with the international community, we continue to chart our own destiny. We did this back in 2001 when we signed the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas and created the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. On the 3rd and 4th December 2018, we, in special meeting, assembled at the Hilton Hotel in Port of Spain, and there we agreed to drive the process by unanimously signing on to the St. Anne's Accord. We did this when we, as a community, met with leaders from around the world to spell out our perspectives and our priorities. And some of those very leaders have joined us in celebration here tonight. We did this when we held landmark events such as the Agri-Investment Forum in Guyana, the second of which was hosted in Trinidad and Tobago, the Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum in Barbados, the Regional Symposium to Address Crime as a Public Health Issue in Port of Spain, and most recently, key stakeholder meetings to help address the crisis in our fellow member state of Haiti. These are but a few of the focused approaches that we have undertaken as heads to reinforce sustainable development, tackle poverty, and address rising crime and insecurity in the region. I say all of this to highlight that, beyond the doubts, CARICOM is working diligently to serve the people of the region. While at times the going may be slow, or the outcome may not have been readily apparent, we all continue to build on the strong foundation laid 50 years ago. Even as we prepare for this great future, as Bob Marley and Frantz Fanon said, we cannot forget our past. We can see that our trajectory, though arduous at times, is one that will lead to a better future for all our people. We, as the leaders, must continue to do our part in contribution to this united journey. And in doing so, we will ensure that the foundation laid by our founding fathers was not just a foundation for us, but also one for our children and for generations to follow. To do this, we must continue to have boundless faith in our destiny. It is not my role this evening to speak to the substantive issues in detail. Those will be addressed later on by chairman of the conference and others. My task is a simple one: to set the tone and to extend the warm hospitality of Trinidad and Tobago to our regional partners and international guests over the coming days. I hope you're satisfied with our arrangements. I must acknowledge that efforts of the Trinidad and Tobago team and the CARICOM secretarial staff, who in collaboration with the chairman of conference, Prime Minister of Dominica, have worked tirelessly to prepare a fitting program to commemorate the launch of the 50th anniversary celebrations. In recognition of the fact that the people of our region are renowned for being able to have a good time, this program includes a special 50th anniversary concert planned for tomorrow evening. I am sure that you all look forward to being able to unwind in Caribbean style. Let us celebrate as we in the Caribbean know how. Tomorrow morning, heads of governments will return to Chaguaramas to pay poignant tribute to the important beginnings of this great community. As Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, it is my deep honor to host you on this, the Caribbean Golden Jubilee of CARICOM. And I look forward to deepening the fraternal bonds within our family of nations in the years ahead. I wish you a most productive, memorable, and enjoyable time in Trinidad and Tobago. All that's left for me to do now is to sincerely thank my friend and brother Roosevelt Skerritt, Prime Minister of Dominica, incoming chairman of CARICOM, for visualizing this day and agreeing to allow Trinidad and Tobago the honor of revisiting our CARICOM past as we commit to a brighter and closer CARICOM future. Brothers and sisters, I thank you.
And that was Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, bringing opening remarks at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting and, of course, the 50th anniversary of CARICOM. But I do have two new guests in studio with me at this time, Dr. Marlene Atz, economist and commentator, and, of course, persona non grata. Did I get it correctly?
Yes, you did.
Julian
I'm
Rogers.
Impressed. I'm impressed.
You're most welcome. Julian Rogers is here with me as well. And we are going to be talking, let's just focus a little bit about what the Prime Minister said, if any. Are there any disconnections between what we hear and what the people experience in CARICOM?
Going forward for the next 50 years, I would like to give CARICOM a challenge, make CARICOM more relevant to the people. You know, I suspect one of the things that has happened over the years, and it's still fairly new, it's evolving, the CARICOM as we know it. The people need to feel more connected, that CARICOM is, in fact, they're part of a Caribbean community. And I think that is one of the things that we need to work on, because there is that sense of disconnect in terms of what CARICOM says we're supposed to represent as a common market and what the average Caribbean citizen feels in terms of when they try certainly to move from one CARICOM country to another. So I think that's one thing that we need to work on in the coming years.
We did speak with my last two guests about this idea of skilled labor or skilled worker and whether or not it was discriminated just to put that word skilled in it. Do you believe that that is one of the hindrances to people moving right across the region?
I think in a lot of ways that matter of skilled workers is misrepresented or misunderstood. Because I was making the point earlier today on the radio that when the skilled movement process started, it concentrated on allowing for graduates at the University of the West Indies. It was also expanded to include entertainers and performers, artists. But today, that grouping has been expanded considerably. So it's no longer graduates at the University of the West Indies and so on. We're now having people who are down to nurses, who are security guards, housekeepers, etc. And they've created a facility that is a vocational certificate so that people who want to go to another Caribbean territory arrive with a certificate. And that is the point of facilitating the freedom of movement.
Yeah, but how is that facilitating the freedom of movement, though? If you are a citizen of CARICOM, why do you need that extra piece of paper? Isn't that a hindrance?
No, there are two things here. One is the ability to work. They don't say that you can't move and go to another Caribbean territory, but they say that if in terms of your employment, there's a regulatory framework in which they can keep track of needs, etc. That's these early days anyhow.
Yeah, I think 2 points I wanted to make. I think certainly in Trinidad and Tobago there was an announcement a couple months ago from the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign and CARICOM Affairs that they've expanded the list to include barbers and hairdressers, etc., etc.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm taking up on Julian's point about the definition of skills. I think they've now moved away simply from persons who have a university degree. But I also want to call out Julian a little bit, because we all know that there continues to be challenges in terms of movement of persons. It's not simply about persons who are seeking employment. The movement itself continues to be a bit of a challenge, and that certainly, when I talk about bringing the community closer to the people, those are issues that I think really have to be addressed as we move forward, as we continue to see this institution called CARICOM evolve and serve the needs of the people of this region.
And a lot revolves around, and you're right, about the mechanics, the implementation, because many people can point to particular instances where they've been denied entry, for instance. We had the classic case of the Maori lady from Jamaica, for instance, going through Barbados and so on. But I think that you know, when people have stripes, they behave in a certain way, and therefore we really need to get the people with the stripes to understand that this freedom of movement should be freedom of movement, not freedom of hindrance kind of thing. Really.
And one of the things that I pointed out earlier in my discussion with Dr. Ram and Dr. Toole is that even CARICOM has recognized that there are hindrances, and I'll quote from their website. They say, action by officials at points of entry threaten to become a deterrent to CARICOM citizens wishing to visit or seek employment in another member state, as is their right under the revised treaty.
I can point to my own example.
Well, I was hoping you'd get to that. I was hoping you'd get to that, because while you defend...
I've been told, and I'm not defending, I've been told by an immigration officer here in Trinidad, when I arrived without that certificate with me, that, you know, we could turn you around and send you back.
Yeah.
And that was offensive, but I really, my hackles didn't go up at that point. But a number of people have had particular instances where the clear thing is that if you arrive at a Caribbean port as a Caribbean citizen, you're entitled to 6 months on the ground to facilitate your regulation, for one, get a certificate, and seeking employment or whatever you want to do. So I think that the immigration authorities need to understand that they're at the heart of ensuring that this thing works. And I know they've been meetings left, right, and center with them as a group across the region to tell them plain and straight, look, this is not, you know, this is your job. You're the host to Caribbean people moving around. And therefore, you really shouldn't be there sending a wrong message about the whole process. But Julian,
if I can sort of borrow Natalie's role as anchor for a moment.
Yes.
We've had these CARICOM passports since 19-something for a long time.
Right.
So there is a general understanding of the role and function. That's the reason we moved towards having these passports that have the CARICOM logo on it. So where is the bottleneck? Because if we've moved towards that, and you're saying, and I appreciate the point you're making, that our immigration colleagues, there needs to be a sort of greater awareness of, you know, the ease of movement and what is meant to be embodied in the free movement principle. So where is the bottleneck? Because these passports would have been agreed to, our immigration colleagues would have been part of that conversation. No one takes responsibility for these hindrances.
I'll tell you where the bottleneck is.
But I'll tell you, and picking that up, the fact is that if the heads said tomorrow, let us put in place the system we had for Cricket World Cup in 2007, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And that is really the problem, because everybody failed to recognize the value of having that facility in place forever. because it is what we need and what was expected.
How do you get people to appreciate and accept that value without this identity? You have the passport, but the passport itself doesn't seem to be enough. And it doesn't have the kind of currency that it is supposed to have. So how do you get that identity and that appreciation?
The leaders themselves are responsible for ensuring there's implementation, and that is one of the gaps that we do have.
So this is the soundbite that we want to send out to the heads of government and their teams.
It is their responsibility.
And their teams that are supporting them at this meeting on this auspicious occasion, the 50th. We need to have the heads coming out and saying, you know, we have to give life and breathe life into the free movement, because clearly it is not gaining the kind of traction that we would like to see around the region.
And it is giving CARICOM as a concept a bad name.
Rogers, please hold that thought. We're going to go straight to the Hyatt Regency Ballroom, where we have the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, ready to speak.
Around the region in our various forums and discussions, there is a lot to be said for the Caribbean personality and spirit, which we sometimes take for granted. Back in January, when the Bahamas assumed the chair of Caribbean Community, I noted that regional cooperation has never been more urgent and necessary. I'm happy to report that during the past 6 months, we have seen a lot of that regional cooperation in action. Part of the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic was the demonstration of the fact that working together, we can ensure the safety of us all. The Bahamas continues to believe that none of us will develop sustainably or securely if we leave our neighbors behind. We continue to believe that none of us will truly prosper if our resources are forever taxed by the poverty and instability of those nearby. And so it is, through close cooperation and action, we've been able to address and make progress on many of the priorities which I set out at the beginning of our term. The heads of government meeting held in Nassau in February was a major catalyst and springboard in pushing forward matters. In respect of the regional response to the impact of climate change on our people, we advanced a commitment made in August last year when we determined to hold a united stance and focus relating to the 4 thematic areas of mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, and support for cross-cutting issues within the region. One of the key outcomes is that Green Climate Fund is willing to assist with the development of a blue economy co-investment strategy for the Caribbean region. As part of our effort to secure an overhaul of the global finance system and processes, CARICOM has thrown its full weight behind the Bridgetown initiative. Colleagues, we must not let up. We must continue to push this agenda forward and continue to build on the great interest and support which other countries have already expressed. Our priorities have also engaged with a range of security-related issues on which we have seen a marked degree of progress. At the Regional Symposium to Address Crime and Violence held here in Port of Spain in April, we collectively declared crime as a public health issue across our region, sending a clear message that we will not tolerate the epidemic. In our declaration, we recognize the urgency of crime in our nations and its cost to our social, economic, and health systems. We immediately implemented the CARICOM Arrest Warrant Treaty and laid the foundation for many other necessary frameworks to build cross-border cooperation, enhance capacity, and enact reforms to ensure safety in our communities. Now, colleagues, we must forge ahead to meet the commitments of our declaration. Our nations and our people cannot afford any less than resolute action. In recognition of the deep and devastating impact which trafficking of illegal firearms from the United States has had on violent crime in our countries, we have declared a war on guns throughout the region. Not for the first time, we join our voices to call upon our neighbor to the north to take action to stop illegal export of firearms to our shores. Our entreaties to the United States have begun to bear fruit. In word and deed, they are playing a much more active role in the effort to reduce the trafficking in people, guns, and drugs. One of the most visible signs of the United States' commitment was evidenced in the leaders' meeting held in May between the leaders of the region and Vice President Kamala Harris. As this was the first official visit to the Bahamas by an American president or vice president since our independence in 1973, we thought that the visit itself indicated an enhanced seriousness of purpose in their stated commitment to engage more fully with the region. The Vice President's commitments to specific security measures and to commit funds to support a number of initiatives were even more welcomed. As global challenges continue to expand and magnify, the certainties of the world order continue to be called into question. We must not let up our efforts to do what we can to guarantee our security in the building blocks of our communities. I'm pleased, therefore, that we have continued to make progress in building greater security, sustainability, and affordability in the supply of food and energy in the region. In spite of the many other pressing issues which vie for our attention, we must not relegate these issues to the back burner. High on the agenda for all our regional discussions has been the situation in Haiti. The Bahamas remains committed to acting as a lead with other CARICOM member states to find a solution to the ongoing humanitarian and security crisis there. The CARICOM-led meeting of Haitian stakeholders in Kingston in June was cause for cautious optimism. Stakeholders welcomed the inclusive nature of the meeting, which were a microcosm of the Haitian society. As a demonstration of the effectiveness of regional cooperation, the Eminent Persons Group, convened by CARICOM, was urged to continue to use CARICOM's good offices to work with all stakeholders to find a definitive solution to the crisis in Haiti. Along with the moral imperative to support our neighbors in finding a way out of the political morass, which is causing so much suffering, it is a prime illustration of the point which I have made for some time now, that none of us can be safe until we are all safe. In Haiti, beyond the pressing issue of security, there's the long-term issue of restoring the country to that fully functional democratic state. This fundamental principle that the people of the CARICOM region should have both a say and a role in their governance is part of the bedrock for our community. This is why CARICOM is already playing a significant role in protecting the internal democracy in the Associated States. And so we joined the meeting of Bermuda, Cayman, the British Virgin Islands, Montserrat, and Anguilla, and reaffirmed their right to self-determination and self-governance. As a matter of principle, we strongly support the proposition that this dialogue should become a standing item of the CARICOM agenda to take place before each meeting of the heads of government. Colleagues, in just 7 days' time, the Bahamas will likewise celebrate our 50th birthday, our 50th anniversary of independence. Activities have been underway for several months, but the date itself is obviously of great significance to us. Amongst our national celebration of past achievements, we have threaded discussions of what we wish to determine for our future. We look forward with great optimism and with a profound sense of hope that we can continue to move closer to realizing the ideals and dreams of our founders. I see so many similarities in the 50th anniversary celebrations of the founding of CARICOM. Finally, I wish to extend my personal thanks to all those who have contributed to the success of our chairmanship. The Secretary General and her team have been invaluable. The staff and your administrations have strongly supported our efforts to move forward our mission. And on a more personal note, colleagues, my gratitude to you for your willingness to engage more deeply in the development of the region. I believe that national and personal friendships, which have been strengthened over the past 6 months, will give us an even greater foundation on which to build. And I'm so happy to hand this over to my good friend, Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerritt, whose capable hands will no doubt continue the building blocks to ensure that our community becomes closer and closer. For all of it, I say thank you.
All right, and that is outgoing chairman of CARICOM, the Honorable Philip Davis out of Bahamas there. And he's saying that Haiti is definitely going to be a priority on the agenda for this 45th Heads of Government meeting. And of course, crime as a public health issue. Guys, what do you make of this crime as a public health issue? Do you think it will impact how it is dealt with?
Well, I mean, I know the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago hosted the symposium, the regional meeting where we discussed it under the theme of crime as a public health issue. And while I agree that it is a public health outcome, because we all feel the impacts and those were ventilated at that meeting, I feel that crime also needs to be looked at as a social and economic issue, because persons engage in crime, and if you look at a typology, not to get too academic, but there are different kinds of crime, but there almost always is a social and economic underpinning for why people engage in crime. What we happen to see are the public health outcomes, so the psychological impacts, the number of deaths, the burnout of our medical colleagues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think we need to step back a little bit and understand what is causing the crime that we're seeing that leads to these public health outcomes that we're witnessing throughout the Caribbean, and it's not simply in Trinidad and Tobago. You know, sometimes I tune into regional news and you realize that it's happening throughout the region, different kinds of problems, different crimes, you know, escalating in different Caribbean countries. So I think we really need to step back a bit and understand the root causes that lead to these public health outcomes, so to speak.
So public health outcome, not necessarily a public health issue.
Not necessarily.
we go back to the Hyatt, where the United Nations, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, is about to speak.
In Jamaica, and the three high-level personalities involved. And I will continue to push for a robust international security force authorized by the Security Council to be able to help the Haitian National Police to defeat and dismantle the gangs. And I reiterate my call to all partners to increase support for the National Police in the form of financing, training, and equipment. Let's be clear. There can be no lasting security without strengthened democratic institutions, and there can be no strong democratic institutions without a drastic improvement in the security situation. Excellencies, the challenges we see in Haiti require greater engagement and greater solidarity. And that is precisely the founding spirit of CARICOM. You have advanced cooperation on every front, from economic and social development, to fighting illegal drugs and arms trafficking, to combating non-communicable diseases, to advance gender equality. And of course, you have championed climate action and focused attention on the plight of small island developing states. The United Nations relies on Caribbean expertise and leadership. And I don't have to look very far for that wisdom. It starts in the office next to mine with my chef de cabinet, former permanent representative of Jamaica to the United Nations, Courtney Rattray. And I look forward to working closely with Trinidad and Tobago's own Ambassador Dennis Francis as the next President of the General Assembly. Excellencies, this anniversary is a time for critical reflection on the enormous challenges confronting the Caribbean. COVID-19 has destroyed lives and livelihoods, independently of our extraordinary response. Tourism and export receipts temporarily collapsed. Prices for fuel and food skyrocketed. Debt burdens grew heavier, liquidity dried up, and access to global capital markets worsened dramatically. All the while, the climate emergency continues to escalate, threatening the very existence of small island and low-lying coastal states. We need action on two fronts. First, action to fix finance. Today's crisis has revealed an international financial system that is outdated, dysfunctional, and unfair. As part of our preparation for the Summit of the Future, I have put forward a detailed blueprint for a redesigned global financial architecture, including the Bretton Woods system. But change will not happen overnight. And Caribbean leaders have been pointing the way forward, including Prime Minister Mia Mottley through the Bridgetown Initiative and Prime Minister Andrew Holness through the Finance for Development Initiative. I have proposed a set of actions world leaders can take now. And they include an SDG stimulus for investments in sustainable development, climate action, and more. An enhanced and effective debt relief mechanism. New financial tools, such as swaps that convert debts into investments in climate adaptation. An increase in the capital base of multilateral development banks, and a change in their business model with a new approach to risk to be able to leverage more private finance at reasonable cost in support of developing countries. The rechanneling of special drawing rights, and the shift in subsidies away from fossil fuels and unsustainable agriculture and food systems into sustainable development. And redressing a core injustice facing middle-income countries. The continued lack of access to concessional financing because of allocation metrics that ignore vulnerabilities to shocks such as financial crises or climate-related disasters. And I fully support your call for a multidimensional vulnerability index. Excellencies, that leads me to the second area for action, the climate crisis. Limiting the rise in global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius is still possible, but it will require carbon emissions to be cut by 45% by 2030. That is why I proposed the Climate Solidarity Pact, in which all big emitters make extra efforts to cut emissions and wealthier countries support emerging economies to do so. And that is why I've put forward an acceleration agenda to boost these efforts. I urged governments to hit fast forward on their net zero deadlines so that the developed countries commit to reaching net zero as close as possible to 2040 and the emerging economies as close as possible to 2050. And Caribbean countries have been showing the way. And developed countries must also finally make good on their financial commitments to developing countries, including by meeting the $100 billion goal, doubling adaptation finance, replenishing the Green Climate Fund, and operationalizing the Loss and Damage Fund this year. I thank Caribbean leaders for your powerful calls for climate justice, advancing global action on loss and damage, investing in renewables, and safeguarding biodiversity, including through the efforts of indigenous communities. Excellencies, in his iconic song, Rally Around the West Indies, the great Calypsonian David Rudder said, "Soon we must take a side or be lost in the rubble in a divided world that don't need islands no more." My message is clear. Our world needs the islands. We need to rally around CARICOM. You have my full support, and I thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. What do you think was the key takeaway for you from his message?
Oh, well, he was speaking my language because I absolutely was in love with the key talking points. You know, the whole question about climate change and the impact that it's going to have, the disproportionate impact it's going to have on island states, not just in terms of things like sea level rise, but on some of the sectors. So agriculture sector or tourism sector. But then there's the flip side of it. And he also made mention of Prime Minister Mottley's Bridgetown initiative, of course. Yes. But then there's the flip side, you know, the call for countries to reduce their carbon footprint, to reduce their dependence on fossil fuels. And to me, it raises the question of climate justice in a sense, because you have some small island developing states, Trinidad and Tobago, of course, and our neighbor Guyana, that our economic fortunes are heavily dependent on fossil fuels.
Suriname is coming up as well.
Suriname, of course, you know, the black gold, you know, there are a number of articles being written recently about the significant levels of economic growth that Guyana and Suriname will enjoy because of their oil and gas fortunes. But the call in the international community is to reduce your carbon footprint. Yeah. So to me, there is a climate justice question. How do those countries that have essentially built empires on the use of fossil fuels, now calling for other countries to kind of reduce their carbon footprint? So it's going to be an interesting sort of evolution of the conversation. So there is the Bridgetown Initiative on the one hand, where Prime Minister Motley essentially is calling for the more developed countries to invest in a fund to help those countries such as ours that will be heavily impacted by the impacts of climate change. But then there's the other side of the conversation that you want us to reduce our fossil fuel. And while I subscribe to the renewable energy from a holistic perspective, I do think there has to be a conversation around the transition, and that transition from fossil fuels to renewables, so to speak, so from non-renewables to renewables. So it's early days yet, and it's interesting to see how these diplomatic conversations will unfold.
We've had straight up to COP27, Julian. We've had all the talks. We know what the impact of climate change is. And here we have the Secretary General, again, talking about how small island states are affected more than others, even though our carbon footprint is so low, but we feel the effect. Will this speech make a difference?
I always worry about the speeches or the reaction to the speeches, because in a lot of ways we expect immediate action. It's like instant coffee kind of thing. But over time I've grown to recognize that these things are progressive exercises. And I think that the expectation that we may have as ordinary citizens may be a little high or unreasonable for one reason or another. But we need at the same time to keep pushing the leaders who are doing all the negotiations to say to them, and I know that they're making particular efforts from time to time. You hear them say, okay, we promised to do this, but we haven't reached, and we're meeting again, and we're meeting again. But they can't stop meeting. But they need to be pushed from the bottom, I suspect, to be able to make sure that they meet the commitments that they've made.
Well, which brings us to the point of diversification, because we keep hearing this fancy word. Yeah. But how do you diversify economies that rely, their bread and butter comes from these fossil fuels, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Suriname? How do you say to them diversify? Do you just leave your black gold away and just say, okay, let me just do away with that and find another way to make some money?
That's a difficult option, because you know, I did a program some time ago and I said, what if we all found out? What would we do? But I see there's entertainment on the stage at the Hyatt, which all these wonderful guests are enjoying. Why don't we enjoy them too?
Let's hear it, ladies and gentlemen, for the Carina Cultural Group. This is a fitting introduction as we welcome to the stage the incoming chairman of the Conference of the Caribbean Community and Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica. Ladies and gentlemen, to address you, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt.
Good evening, everyone. I want to especially recognize the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, my colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I believe it is fitting that we should gather here in Trinidad and Tobago on this most significant occasion in the history of the Caribbean community, CARICOM. It is significant because it was here 50 years ago that Prime Ministers Errol Barrow of Barbados, Forbes Burnham of Guyana, Michael Manley of Jamaica, and Dr. Eric Williams of Trinidad and Tobago signed the Treaty of Chaguaramas, setting the region on a solid footing on the road to integration. I must thank the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, for his ready acceptance of my proposal to host the 45th meeting of the conference in recognition of the fact that it coincides with the milestone of our community's golden anniversary. Prime Minister, thank you very much. And I want to say to some of you that Dr. Rowley is a much nicer man than some of you think. You just have to get to know him. I am sure you will agree with me that there is no better place than the birthplace of CARICOM to mark and celebrate this occasion. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I feel a sense of deep privilege that I assume the chair of the Conference of Heads of Government of CARICOM as we embark on another 50 years of strengthening regional integration to further advance gains already made in the interest of all the people of our region. I follow the Honorable Philip Davis, Prime Minister of the Bahamas, whose energetic and thoughtful leadership over the past 6 months has set the tone for this week's celebrations. Prime Minister, thank you very much. As a matter of fact, he did so well, I contemplated at some point to allow him to continue for another 6 months. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, these past 50 years of CARICOM have seen many achievements. We deserve to be proud of our history. It is no mean feat that we have the longest surviving economic integration movement in the developing world. And second only to the European Union globally. We have things that we should be proud of in CARICOM. And so it is with justifiable pride that we should all say, I am CARICOM. Even as we celebrate this landmark in the evolution of our integration movement, we must be mindful that the symbols and events of celebration do not serve as a distraction from the substance of the heavy lifting still needed to make our community viable, prosperous, secure, and beneficial to all of its people. As we set ourselves new targets to ensure that we thrive in this ever-changing global environment, there are unfinished tasks that we must complete. The issue of free movement, non-tariff barriers to trade, reliable and affordable transportation are all fundamental to a truly integrated CARICOM. We must address our minds and collective will to resolve some key issues. We have the opportunity on this historic occasion, and as we deliberate over the next few days, to take some decisions that can be truly transformative for our people and which will shape the future of our community for the next 50 years. On the eve of the 50th anniversary of the CARICOM community, I pose a question to us all. One that I am sure is on the minds of all citizens of this region. What is really preventing us from reviving the single domestic space that once allowed our citizens to traverse freely across our region? We have already tried and tested the Advanced Passenger Information System, APIS, which allows immigration and security personnel in each of our countries full access to the details of every passenger boarding an aircraft or a ferry. The APIS system also makes a nonsense of the continued use of the ED forms. Additionally, the Implementation Agency for Crime and Security Systems, IMPACS, and the Regional Security System, RSS, institutions that we have relied on during the toughest of times, are both well equipped to complement the workings of the Advanced Passenger Information System. My distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to make intra-regional travel a joy rather than a hassle. "16 years ago, we showed considerable commitment and political will to allow our people to move freely through 10 member states. It worked then, it can work now. And we have Sister Mia who pioneered those efforts 16 years ago. Similar political will must be brought to bear on the issues of expansion of the categories for free movement of skilled nationals to benefit the growth and expansion of the regional economy and the spirit of our community. And what better time than the celebration of our 50th anniversary to say to all of us in the Caribbean that we can move freely within the CARICOM space. The reality is that in any free trade arrangement within an integration movement, there will be those who benefit more than others. We recognize this in our revised treaty. It is therefore incumbent upon us all to strive to increase the ability of the less endowed to participate more fully in the trading arrangements. We must all seek to make our arrangements more equitable and use the provisions of the treaty in a more positive manner. It is true that there are dispute mechanism procedures, but we are all in this together for the benefit of the entire CARICOM. This is the true spirit of the community. We are our brothers and sisters' keeper, not only in times of disaster, but in all things. Ladies and gentlemen, unity in economic well-being, in security, in health, and in disaster management must be translated into all our processes. This must be the mantra that propels us into the next 50 years. Another of our processes which must be addressed is that of regional travel. We are all very aware of the challenges of making air and sea transportation more efficient and affordable. But I dare say, it is for these insistent challenges that our region looks most to this CARICOM community for solutions. Colleague heads, we need now to actively pursue creative and affordable partnerships to deliver on the crucial element of integration in the interests of our peoples. The movement of people and goods are the backbone of a successful integration movement. We have done all the studies, and the statistics point us to the favorable outcome of an effective transportation system. I accept that this is a challenge that requires investments, which may not see an immediate return. It requires confidence that the provision of such a service will boost commercial opportunities and encourage more intra-regional travel. Our drive to reduce our food import bill by 25% by 2025 depends in large measure on intra-regional transportation. The early indications are that our agricultural sector and our farmers are rising to the challenge. We need our entrepreneurs, therefore, to look favorably upon the opportunities available in the transportation sector and be there for the long haul. As we reflect and deliberate on the challenges of true integration, we must address our minds to the complex issues facing our member state, Haiti. We have committed as a community to supporting the Haitian people, to broker a Haitian-led solution to the instability that they now face. It is a crisis that requires our continued support and the support of a wider international community. The initial outreach has met with generally favorable reactions. We are well aware that it is just the beginning, and our engagement must build from that. And we must keep the dialogue going until there is not only light at the end of the tunnel, but a station for the stakeholders to disembark from the train, united in purpose and action. The trust that the Haitian stakeholders have placed in us exemplifies the credibility that CARICOM has built over the years. And I say to our brother Prime Minister of Haiti, you will see even increased support for the Haitian people as we seek to find a solution to your challenges. This world owes it to Haiti, and we should never allow an appearance of Haitian fatigue in our world. And we in CARICOM, we shall stand with Haiti. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of CARICOM, it concerns me that too many of our citizens are skeptical and some downright dismissive of the value and benefit of CARICOM. I am personally encouraged, however, by the engagement of our youth and their involvement in advancing the objectives of our community. For it is their actions that will determine where we go over the next 50 years. Yes, we are 50 years strong with a solid foundation to build on. It is upon that foundation that our youth should be bold enough to forge a path for CARICOM that takes it to places that we have not seen before, or even been too cautious to traverse. I am encouraged that our young people have shown much promise and have demonstrated their readiness, whether it is in the battle against climate change, their grasp of technology, and their leveraging of new technologies to create jobs right at home, their innovation and creativity, allied with entrepreneurship and cultural products, and in sports and arts. Our youth are the present and the future, and I am proud that this time around, that they too are actively involved in the path being mapped out to help them become productive global citizens. But my dear friends, the region's 11 million young people are dependent on this CARICOM to play a leading role in crime prevention and the elimination of the harmful effects on citizens and societies. Our students are depending on us to harmonize our regional education systems and to set targeted learning outcomes to prepare millennials to not just survive, but to thrive in a fast-paced global economy, to reconstruct a classroom layout and timetable that promotes the development of the holistic child, grounded in culture and values. Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to welcome to this forum the Secretary General of the United Nations. The distinguished Secretary General, by his very presence here, in this significant holiday week in the United States, demonstrates his interest and commitment to CARICOM. Secretary General, we appreciate your leadership and the sharp focus that you have brought to issues confronting CARICOM and the wider developing world. Left to us, we would have appointed you the president of the world. So you'll be in a better position to effect the change that we're looking for. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, a challenge to each of us here assembled is to demonstrate the same level of commitment that the Secretary General has for CARICOM. Let us believe in CARICOM. Take our commitments to and responsibilities in CARICOM seriously. And I'm not here talking about heads. I'm talking about all of us in the Caribbean community must take our responsibility seriously. Let us lift CARICOM up, and we just may be pleasantly surprised by the benefits that a focused, united, unified CARICOM can bring to our countries and to the people we each have the honor to serve. CARICOM has no doubt been good to us, and let us speak about the positive virtues of CARICOM while we address the outstanding issues. May God bless all of us. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that was the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, the incoming chairman of CARICOM. And one of the things that stood out to me is that he says, it's time to make interregional travel a joy rather than an asset. He said 16 years ago we did it. 16 years later, we can do it again.
Well, he's an optimist in the circumstances, I would say that. I mean, there are particular efforts, certainly Caribbean Airlines, certainly Inter-Caribbean, but I know what people are waiting for. They're waiting for the return of LIAT, for instance. They're waiting for the easy movement across the region in the same way they expect to move as people. And somebody's got to pay for this. And this is a discussion that has revolved around the government's taken a clear decision that they need to cut the taxes for the tickets. So the tickets are cheaper, and therefore we do two things. One, we make it easier, cheaper for people to travel. Certainly, if there's an increase in travel, the airlines themselves have the ability now to make an investment in the kind of aircraft and so on. I mean, CAL is doing it bit by bit. Inter-Caribbean is adding it bit by bit. But there needs to be a collective response to the demand for travel within region that is easier and cheaper.
But when we hear from CAL, we hear that the taxes are the issue, and not the airline costs.
That's what I'm saying to you. The governments need to come to terms and say, look, we are going to have to cut our taxes.
To reduce
they have to reduce the taxes dramatically, because in some cases the taxes are just as high as the actual airline fare.
And do you think we'll see that anytime soon?
I think it's a chicken and egg, because you need the taxes, you need the revenues to invest in the kinds of aircrafts that you require, etc. So it's a chicken and egg, and they have to be. I know years ago there was a study done on the
By the Caribbean Development Bank.
That's correct, absolutely. I think it was Dr. Melville. Yeah. So I think we need to have, instead of having the kind of anecdotal information, we need to do a deep dive to understand where we are now. Because also one of the things that would be including in that pricing system would be the cost of fuel. You know, so all of these issues you'd have to look at. So rather than simply saying, you know, do away with the taxes.
Yes, I mean, I had an interview with Dr. Rowley a couple of days ago, and it's going to come up as part of the responses to my question about air transport and sea transport, by the way, across this region. I was talking to somebody earlier today who was boasting, in fact, one of the producers from Freedom FM, talking about the fact that she now takes the water taxi from Port of Spain to San Fernando, and how efficient it is and reliable, and the price, of course, is very $15 per trip. That is something we would like to see in many other Caribbean countries. Of course, we're talking about a different kind of waterway when we're dealing with the Gulf, you know, compared to the high seas, the connection to, say, between Trinidad and Tobago. But those are two things we got to fix.
We do have a Turner Jones on a Zoom with us. Therese, are you hearing me?
Yeah, she's back.
And this is a fascinating topic, and I'm glad that Julian picked up on the point about the sea, because, for example, the OECS countries, with their proximity even to Barbados and Trinidad, you could see a fast ferry moving through that region a lot more efficiently than what we have now. Liad is limping. Liad is pretty much insolvent. Cal can step in, but probably not going to solve the issue quickly. And there is an ever greater demand. I mean, there is no regional integration. There is no regional trade without interconnectivity by air and people being able to move freely. And the cost of travel is prohibitive now for the average person. So even if you wanted to do a weekend trip to Barbados from Kingston, for example, you have to think twice because it's more expensive than going to New York even. So this is a problem that can't wait another 50 years to be solved. This has to be solved quickly. I think if we take examples from Europe, there are ferries running on green hydrogen now. There's ways to electrify the transport. We have to take more than a deep dive. And I like that you use the example of the water taxi from San Fernando in Trinidad, because my first experience of that was in Bermuda, and Bermuda is a very tiny island, as we know, but Bermuda, because it didn't want to have congestion and traffic, they use water taxis to get people from one part of the island to the next. So even in my own country, the Bahamas, and an island like Providence, for example, there's no reason why we couldn't have more water taxis, say, moving from the eastern end of New Providence or downtown New Providence over to Paradise Island. And I mean, there's some of that mostly for tourists, but for people who work in the western side of the island coming from the east, I mean, there are other ways to do it. And all of our cities now are full of congestion and traffic. And this is really another problem with productivity. People can't get to work. People can't get to work on time. People can't get to do transactions quickly, right?
Yeah.
So I love this idea.
Thank you, Therese. So we charge high airfares because we want the government taxes to take care of the airline, but then we turn around and subsidize the airline. How does it really work?
There's a component there you may be missing. The airports need to be maintained by the governments, and that is at the heart of the tax.
Why you charge the taxes and then turn around and subsidize the airline?
You know what is interesting? During COVID, everything collapsed. The governments weren't collecting any airline taxes. So why do you go back now to the old regime when you realize that you need to make a fundamental change? And that's occurred in many other areas, not just in the airline.
Yeah, and I think the conversation, COVID is a good turning point, a good pivot point for the region. There are lessons that we learned during that 2-year period, which I think we've quickly forgotten, unfortunately. And we really have to to stop and be introspective, I think. Prime Minister Motley calls it, I think, an inflection point for the region, and I think we really have to look at this critical juncture that we're in. Now, the conversation around air travel, sea travel also has an impact on the tourism sector, and as I listened to the Prime Minister of Dominica speaking, I could imagine that his economy would be built on ecotourism, but there is a challenge getting potential tourists into the island. So for them, it is not quite a burning platform, but it is a serious concern. How do you develop their mountains, their watercourses, etc., an ecotourism product when you don't have a reliable, air transportation system coming to bring people into the island? So it's not simply a question of vacation, just for the sake of vacation or for business travel, but it also is the sustainability of some of these islands and the economic sectors that can sustain these islands moving forward.
You know what? You know what's interesting? We have pockets of efficiency of movement of people in the Caribbean, right? Let's take St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for instance. They have ferries going every day to all of the islands in such a way that students living on the island of Bequia can go to school every day in St. Vincent.
In St. Vincent, yes.
Right? And several other connections. You have ferries going between St. Lucia, Martinique.
St. Kitts and Nevis.
No, they go, the French des Îles goes from St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Antigua, and turns around and comes back. You got that kind of connection. You got connections in the Virgin Islands. So they're not, this is not a fact, and of course, the connection between the sea bridge between Trinidad and Tobago. So we have the experience of operating in very rough waters, I would say, because if you travel on a ferry, a boat between St. Vincent and Bequia, you better have a tough stomach, because once you get in the channel there, I've had that experience where I wanted to jump off the boat and swim, and I couldn't swim anyhow.
We have we have just about 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
What do you think CARICOM as an institution can learn from the OECS?
A great deal. They have perfected the freedom of movement. You can go between St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Grenada, Dominica, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts, and Nevis. They have worked out the ease of freedom of movement. I know the Antigua and Barbuda people in our government has just instituted a regime where there is no the so-called work permit or fees for work permits, etc. So, but you know what? The problem here is that we don't have a consistency of action. In other words, what was expected in CARICOM was a clear understanding that we do this all together.
Or not at all.
Or not at all.
Right.
So COVID was an example. We had the resources of CARFA looking after the scientific response to the pandemic.
So the region was able to deal with it.
But each country was competing against each other to say how many COVID cases we have. It makes no sense. It was offensive because, Jamaica's standing back and saying, okay, Barbados has more COVID cases than us today.
I think that shows you the weaknesses and some of the things that we still have to work on with CARICOM. Therese, we do have to wrap. Your final comments, quickly?
No, I think there's a lot to do, clearly. I think the point of this 50th anniversary is to re-energize us, to think about the future, forget about the past. It's what we're going to do to move this region forward. We didn't talk about digitalization and digital transformation and efficiency of government and all that, but that has to be part of the equation. And I'm positive, because I'm always positive, and I think we ought to build the partnerships to help us get there. I love the SG's speech. I loved his emphasis on sustainability, and we need to just put that at the center of all of our decision making for the future, and it'll be bright.
All right, thank you so much, Therese Turner-Jones. There's giving us her final comments. All right, so Dr. Arts, Julian, I really want to thank you so much for being with us here on Caribbean Bridges. Thank you all to our audience and to all the members of the Caribbean community and those in the wider Caribbean. Let us hope that this 50th anniversary, when we open those capsules 50 years down the road, that we have something that we can be proud of.
You'll be there.
I hope so. Have a great evening, everybody.